Hi, I'm Cory Skimming, Product Marketing Manager with VMware Tanzu, and today I'm joined with Jim Walker from our partner, Cockroach Labs. Jim, welcome. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us a bit about Cockroach Labs?
I was just so excited to say hello, Cory, as a fellow product marketer. Hi, everybody. My name is Jim Walker. I have been VP of Product Marketing here at Cockroach Labs for about 2.5 years and have recently changed to become a principal product evangelist, which I think means I just talk about the product a lot. So hopefully this is going to be a good conversation. I've come from a background in distributed systems. I've been in the Kubernetes space for quite some time. I worked at a company called CoreOS a long time ago before it was it's gone away. So I'm definitely an advocate and a believer in all things distributed and Kubernetes.
Awesome. So Cockroach Labs is obviously a partner of VMware Tanzu. Can you tell us a little bit about Cockroach as a company before we dive into the technology?
Sure. Cockroach Labs, we do experimentation on cockroaches. No, we do not. It isn't like, so we actually have built a database, Cory. Yeah, right, exactly. People ask us about the name all the time. And, our founder named the database CockroachDB because it's a database you can't kill. Kind of like Kubernetes, right? Like you kill pods and they pop up somewhere else, right? So
yeah,
this is not kind of the same core concept. And so, the name is really kind of after our resilience factor, but I think also, Cockroach as a database is also something that easily scales, propagates and gets everywhere on the planet. So Cockroach Labs has been around for over 6 years. We were started by a team of engineers that came from Google who kind of had a real frontline view of really distributed systems and some of the core backend systems that actually help scale Google. Peter and Spencer, two of our founders, were actually partly responsible for building out Colossus, which is the backend file storage, right, or backend storage stuff, right? So they kind of knew distributed systems, and then they left Google. They started some companies. They were just upset that they didn't have the same tooling, and they were very familiar with Spanner. And they said, well, what if we just built Spanner from the ground up and we're able to run it anywhere? And so that's really kind of where Cockroach Labs kind of started. And if you're not familiar with what Cloud Spanner is, it's a distributed relational database that Google had created. And so we built an open free version of that called CockroachDB. This is a database that was built on the same core principles as Spanner. So like Spanner was built for Borg, which is kind of like the internal Kubernetes at Google, right? CockroachDB is the Kubernetes. So I think that's why we're talking here, Cory, right? We built a database that was distributed and really cloud native from the ground up, and suiting these kind of workloads that are running in Kubernetes.
Yeah, so you have a very clear view into kind of what those database needs of Kubernetes are really from the ground up. I think it would be really helpful for our audience to hear what kinds of problem sets CockroachDB is really addressing in the developer and even the DevOps community.
Yeah, it's funny, Cory, when I first got into this Kubernetes thing, it was all about stateless. And I was like, stateless, what does that even mean? Like, what? Like, I don't know. I coded for years. So I kind of think of like my data model before I even start coding my application. I don't know, legacy, I guess. And I don't know what the term is for that, but I think nearly every application is dependent on data at some point. And how we store data and how we manipulate, how we access, how we deal with that data is actually paramount to the success of the application itself. And so, I think what's happened though with distributed systems is the concept of the database has lagged behind the way we distribute and orchestrate compute. Right. I think like we think about, when you think about modern systems and modern infrastructure like Kubernetes, right, we basically re-architected and rebuilt infrastructure. Like we said, look, there is a better way to do this so that we can scale more easily, right? So we can be resilient and survive failures of a pod or whatever that is, right? And so these concepts are great. What's interesting though, I think one of the reasons that happen is I think people typically tie the database to the application. And for me, I believe that the database is actually part of the infrastructure, right? And the database should be a service, and the database should just be one of these things that lives on top of the infrastructure, actually in the infrastructure. And that dividing line between infrastructure and application is that language, that's data, right? And so For us, it's let's build a database that does that. And, I think, we want to run all types of workloads on Kubernetes, be it, these deep kind of system of record transactional workloads, or it could be just like some app to do some calendaring thing where it's not like, life or death mission critical business. It still has the same requirements of scale, being multi-region, being global, being on and available all the time. And that's, I think the interesting part about data on Kubernetes today.
Data on Kubernetes or persistence on Kubernetes has definitely been a challenge that I think the market, including Cockroach, has started to address as we shift to a more cloud native and ephemeral way of doing things. Yeah. So if we think about those distributed systems and even, looking at the shift to kind of multi-cloud architectures that we're seeing a lot in the market, how do you see Kubernetes more broadly, but more specifically VMware Tanzu and Cockroach kind of enabling that journey to cloud and making it easier for customers to, go on that journey?
Yeah, well, it's critical, the work that, VMware is doing around Tanzu to make these things just more easily consumed ultimately, Cory. Mm-hmm. Like, back when I was at CoreOS, the problem with Kubernetes at the time, it was kind of like this intelligentsia who didn't want to simplify things, right? It's like, I get it, it's really cool, but we got to simplify this so everybody can get it, right? Because these things are complex. Like it took me a while to really kind of grasp how all this worked, right? And I think we're all going through that paradigm shift, and a paradigm shift is difficult for people. And I think, when I look at like what Tanzu is doing, simplifying things it's just a critical piece of this, right? And that we're doing it on the other side for the database. I think that has to happen too, right? Because what is data? What is a database in an ephemeral world? What? Are you kidding me? Yeah. So I think number one, it's simplicity. I think the second thing, and you touched on it in the question, is it's great that we can run these things in a single region, in a single cloud, or a single instance somewhere. But like really, truly being multi-cloud, I think is a requirement of organizations. They want to be on-prem, they want to be in the cloud, they want to be across multiple different regions, which I think of as just different clouds, really, because like the complexities are crazy, right? Like even a multi-region application is multi-cloud, in my opinion. But then there's multi-cloud, like, look, I want to run on AWS, I want to run on Azure, I want to run on GCP, I want to run on Alibaba, I want to run everywhere, right? And how do we simplify that? And I think that's one of the biggest challenges we have in the Kubernetes community today. And I think, the work that, VMware, the understanding of these problems, there's not another company who understands these problems better than VMware, that's for sure. And, are we going to move towards a place where there's a single control plane across multiple different Kubernetes clusters? And is that Tanzu? And can we mitigate that? Well, I think there's steps that we can take. And I love the direction in which the market is heading. For us, we're just going to federate at the data layer, and we'll just run instances across. We could do it today. We could be single logical database on multiple different, clusters and multiple different Tanzu instances. But the beauty is we're going to work in that and around that as the rest of everything kind of becomes federated, and we move down that path.
Cool. So thanks so much for talking with me, Jim. We're really excited to be partnering with Cockroach Labs, and this was great.
Thank you as well, Cory. We're super excited about the relationship with VMware. This is just one of these companies that me personally, I've been involved with for a long time, and it's just such a great team. And I love where Kubernetes is going under the guise of Tanzu. So this is great. Thank you.